also have the very in-depth and interesting sessions that Maharaj takes us through. And currently, we are going through the Bhagavad Gita. So today, we are going to go through the chapter 15, Yoga of the Supreme Person. And that's the subject matter that Maharaj will take us through. So, on behalf of all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, on behalf of the School of Vedic Studies, we welcome Maharaj again and welcome all of you. And to welcome Maharaj, let's first pay our respects to Maharaj. Vancha kalpataru bhyascha, kripa sindhu bhaivacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, namo namaha. So, without much ado, we will now go over to Maharaj to begin our session on the chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, over to you.
Okay, can I share the screen?
Maharaj, for sure. And I will just one sec here. Maharaj, you can share the screen now. You want to kindly mute yourself. Devotees, kindly mute yourself and also the videos and focus on the presentation. The format is the same. We have an hour, and in the last few minutes of the session, it ends at 8:30 Oman time. We can have some question answers if time permits. But let's go to the presentation. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we are now going to go through the chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme, or Purushottam Yoga. So, as usual, I will start with what Prabhupada says in the beginning of the chapter. The ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge is to detach oneself from the entanglement of material world and to understand Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who understands Krishna's supreme identity surrenders unto him and engages in his devotional service. So this is a summary of Prabhupada giving the 15th chapter. Then we'll study the 15th chapter. It is in two parts. One is the beginning section of the verses from 1 to 3 and 4 to 6, giving us our own position. What is our position in the material world? And that I have entitled The Material World as a Reflected Banyan Tree and the Needs to Become Detached from It. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita in the first 3 verses of 15th chapter. And it's basically describing the description of the samsara, our position, the living entity's position, and what it means to be liberation from this. Then the second part is going through the actual Purushottam Yoga, the Yoga of Krishna, where transmigration is explained about the jiva, Krishna's position as the maintainer, and then summarize the conclusion of Veda, what is the purpose behind Vedas. So in the beginning, as I said, Krishna is explaining the desire of our entanglement in this material world. So it is described that this material world is like a reflection of the spiritual world. And is likened to a banyan tree, which is got its roots growing upwards and branches going downwards. So, of course, this tree's roots begin from Brahma going to Goloka, and the branches are coming down towards the material planets. And there are 2 sections, pious acts and impious acts. So pious acts will lead you to Goloka and liberation, and impious acts will lead you down to hellish regions. Now, the pious acts are basically, following the path of bhakti and all the activities which you do which are in relation to pious deeds. And Vedic literature gives us, as I've circled down on the left side, the Vedic hymns, and then ultimately understanding the Vedic hymns of the scriptures will lead you to liberation. On the right side, there is sense objects, economic development, religiosity, sense gratification. And all these things can be transferred towards the right side, the pious acts, or they can be perverted and could be impious, and that could lead us to the hellish regions. The description of samsara is given in the first three verses, 1 to 3. So text 1 said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upwards and its branches downwards, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows, now this is the most underlying word, one who knows this tree is the knower of Vedas. So of course, in other words, if you understand the words of Krishna, which is describing us in the Vedic hymns in all the different literatures, specifically, namely, he has given a lot of insight about himself through his own personal words spoken by him in the Bhagavad Gita, that the conclusion is to know him. And when we know his supreme position, then obviously we will surrender. In the small section of the purport, which I've extracted from the main purport, after discussion of the importance of the bhakti yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. Now, of course, Prabhupada is saying in the purport that already in the Bhakti chapter, chapter 9, Krishna is explaining very, very clearly the purpose of human life is to engage in bhakti or devotional service. Then what is the point of knowing Vedas? And where does the Vedas come into? Vedas is an act of knowledge which enhances our depth of knowing about Krishna so that we can actually surrender to him. So the entanglement in this material world is compared here to banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another branch, to another, and to another. The tree of material world has no end. And for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The Vedic hymns meant for elevating oneself are called the leaves of this tree. The tree's root grow upwards because they begin from where Brahma is located, to the topmost planet of this universe. If one understands this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. So obviously, this is an analogy given, or kind of a metaphor of our material existence. That this metaphor is explaining how the material world is likened to the tree and the tree's branches, tree's roots, and how we can know this and come out. So of course, in our material world today, we have many systems available to us to guide us from point A to point B. So, we have our, electronic gadgets. You put in your home address and then your destination address, and then you click the button and it works out a route for you of which route you have to take to go from your home to the destination where you wanted to go. So the gadget will guide you and tell you exactly how to get to your destination. But if you are not familiar and you don't have the access of a gadget like that, then you are left at your own destiny, you can say, that you have to go here, there, turn right, turn left, go straight, and then you don't know where to go to. So you ask someone, excuse me, I want to go to this and this place. Can you tell me? He said, I don't know exactly where that place is, but I can guide you roughly in that direction. So he would guide you to the direction. And further down, you have to ask another person and another person. Till finally you get to your destination. So similarly, one who understands this Bhagavad Gita very clearly, then he doesn't need to ask anyone, because Krishna himself is giving us the path or the direction of how to come to him. In other words, he is what we call in England, we have a roadmap before the electronic gadgets came. The book was called A to Z of London. So you have an A to Z of London, and then you have A to Z of UK. And you open up the page where you want to go, and it will guide you the map system and guide you properly so you cannot get lost. So I describe our Bhagavad Gita as an A to Z for mankind. From birth till death, it will give you the journey, how to come to the Supreme Lord. So this the root of this material existence grows upwards. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe, from where the whole universe expands, with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entities' activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. So this is mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. ज्ञान तुम्हारे नाम कहिए कई तवा dharma artha kama moksha vanchadi sava. The darkness of ignorance is called kaitava, the way of cheating. So Prabhupada is explaining that this is a kaitava, cheating process. So the darkness of ignorance will put us into, in say an illusion, the way of cheating, which begins from religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. So, dharma, artha, kama, moksha is the steps to come out of it. Now, of course, we can use religiosity for our own purpose. As we see in the material world today, there are many so-called religions which are kind of self-motivated for their own personal gains, but it is not bringing them out of darkness. It is just leading them more and more into darkness, thinking that they are coming out of darkness by following these so-called bogus religious. And then economic development, of course, nowadays we think that as we develop more and more economically, we'll be much more better situated in our position. And that will assist our sense gratification even more. But we find that the more and more we become economically developed, the more and more sense gratification comes, the more and more entanglement comes. And liberation, moksha, is nowhere in sight. So traditionally, Prabhupada coined this phrase, simple living, high thinking. And what a simple living means? That you minimize your living. Basically, what you need, as Prabhupada says, that in India we have this saying, roti, kapda, or makan. You need roti, some food, kapda, few clothings, and makan, a house for dwelling. Now, you don't need excessive food stuff. You don't need excessive clothing, and you do not for sure need excessive housing. Now we see, as you develop economically more and more, you want to move into better economically developed areas, more upmarket areas where houses cost more than £1 million. Whereas you're living down to earth areas, the houses may be a little cheaper. And same with clothing. As you become more and more economically developed, what happens? You have so much access to money, so you want to buy clothes more and more and more to be up with the fashionables. And I generally say that, if you really want to see how entangled we are, go to your wardrobe and check your wardrobe and check how much clothing you have accumulated and how much of those clothing have you worn. And just try to pick up any one piece of garment and think, when was the last time you wore that garment? Probably you won't remember. That means that garment doesn't mean anything to you. It is just a space occupier in your wardrobe. Basically, simple living means you need some decent clothing to cover your body for decency. According to the weather condition, warm or cold, you need warm clothes. You need lighter clothes for hotter weather, and so forth. Now, as far as food is concerned, you need food just for sustaining the body. But we have bypassed the sustenance business and we've got into sense enjoyment. We eat more and more just to engage our palatable tongue for all these palatable foods. We eat so much that we become obese. And then when we become obese, then the doctor says, oh, my dear friend, you got to lose some weight. So you go and join a gym club and start spending money for the gym and precious time you spend in gym trying to lose weight, and you do exercise for hours, you lose half a kilo and then come back and eat some more and put it again. So it's like a deadly cycle you have caught up yourself in. So we have to be careful that we do not become too much entangled. That's why the words of Shastra are very much important to tell us what is right and what is wrong. So there is no need. So now there is ready experience in this world of the tree, situated with its branches down and its roots upward. But there is such a thing So of course, in reality, we don't see a tree which has got its roots upwards and the tree's branches growing downwards. We see trees all around us, and all we see is the top part of the tree, which is the trunk and the branches and the fruits and flowers it bears. But the roots you don't see. But here they're saying there is such a thing. And what is that thing? That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that tree on the bank, reflected upon the water with the branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire. Just as the tree's reflection is situated on the water, the desire is the cause of things being situated on this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. So of course, this reflection is there, as we have seen in this slide. I'm showing you a beautiful tree. It's very nicely, you can see a very colorful tree. And then in the water, you see the reflection of the same tree. Now, the tree which we see above ground is a real tree. And the reflection is an illusionary tree which is reflected in the water by the act of light. But really, you cannot pluck any fruits or flowers from the reflection. You have to take it from the real tree. So again, this is an metaphor which is giving us an example of understanding that this material world is just a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. It's not the real thing. This tree being reflected, this tree being the reflection of the real tree is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. We personally take Brahman to be the root of this material tree. But from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, comes Prakriti, Purusha, then the 3 gunas, then the 5 gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, then the 10 senses, Dasa Indriya, and next, the 11th one, which is considered as 11th sense, is the mind. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestation, then this material world is the manifestation of the center by 180 degrees, and the other 180 degrees constitute spiritual world. The material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality. And the Purport Prabhupada is saying very clearly how the material world is described and how it is divided into different elements of material energies. And this we can see in our own idea, the Panchatattva, the 5 main elements which the material world is consisting of, as we know in this planet Earth, where the scientists also have proven the fact. The first one is, of course, the fire or Agni Tattva. Second is water or Jala Tattva. Third is water, earth element or Prithvi. Fourth is ether, the Akash Tattva. And air, the Vayu. So these are 5 basic elements which we are constituted of. So these are also temporary, it's not permanent. And the 5 senses and sense organs, the tongue is associated with taste, nose with smell, ear with hearing, eyes with sight, and skin with touch. So all this is what makes us understand this world. Now you can understand this world in its real sense or in its reflection way. The reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal. The material reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. When it is said that the person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment of this material world. If one knows the process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the trees. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of God in himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. So again, we are mesmerized by the phantasmagoria of this material world, and we are illusioned by this and think this is the real world. And that is why from birth till death, all we do is spend all our time and energy to make ourselves happy in this material world, thinking it is an everlasting experience. But in reality, we know every day is a change, one day closer to death, and eventually death comes and knocks on your door and everything is finished. And then we become completely bewildered. So we know that it's not lasting, but still we do not try to make effort to come out of this illusion. So here is another slide, which is basically giving that concept. The little child looking at himself in the reflection is the exact replica. So the child, out of his innocence, sees himself exactly as himself. But then on the other slide, we see the cat is looking at the reflection in the mirror, and it sees himself as a tiger. So it's kind of trying to see yourself, which you're not really yourself. In other words, we try to see in this world as we are the Lord and Master of this world. We are the controllers, as Prabhupada says, to load it over material energy. We're trying to be something which we are not. So really, if you want to understand the Vedas and then the conclusion of the scripture, then you have to be of innocent of a child. So the innocent of the child is that he accepts Krishna as he is. Whereas as you grow up, then you begin to have your own concepts and you try to speculate about the Supreme. The branches of this tree extend downwards and upwards, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of senses. The tree also has its roots going down, and these are bound by the fruitive actions of the human society. So in text, second text, it is explaining that how the tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. As we become more and more entangled and affected by the three modes of material nature, then of course we become more and more confused in this material world and get lost in the darkness of this ignorant world. So Krishna is saying very clearly in Bhagavad Gita in the early chapters that, oh Arjuna, rise above these three modes. Make yourself free from these modes. Then you will understand your real position. And that real position is that you have to transcend to Visuddha Sattva, pure mode of goodness. So when we are rising ourselves from the three modes of material nature, then we can understand our real position. So the three modes are Sattva Gun, goodness, which is based on knowledge, free from sins, conditioned by the sense of happiness. Rajagun, passion, ultimate desires, fruitive activities, attraction between man and woman. Tamagun, ignorance, madness, laziness, sleep, intoxication. So these are the different understanding of the three gunas which will affect us. So in the mode of goodness, of course, the three modes, as I said, it is a byproduct of the material nature. In mode of goodness, if you have a higher understanding of the scriptures, then you will take shelter of the scriptures and worship the Supreme Lord. In mode of passion, you will become so much controlled by this world, running here, there, and everywhere, without aim. As we say in English, aimlessly going here, there, and everywhere. But the underlying word is aimless, that there is no aim, there's no goal to achieve. And of course, in mode of ignorance, we become very lazy, we become intoxicated, and we become completely absorbed in the lower modes where we don't see reality. We just lie down as if we are dead or living dead. So in the purport Prabhupada saying, the description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches are spread in all directions. In the lower parts, there are variegated manifestations of living beings, living entities, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts of the branches form the living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As the tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. Sometimes we find a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes the tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionally greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. So this slide is also showing that there is all different species which we take up in our body. As I said earlier on, that first verses are explaining the samsara of repeated birth and death. So we keep going to different words, and then higher planetary system is explained by Prabhupada in the purport, that they are the demigods who are also not free from the modes of material nature, although I would say in the heavenly planets, the mode of goodness is a little bit more prominent than our planet where we are here, where we have mode of passion, mode of ignorance, mode of goodness, almost in equal proportions. So, what is the meaning of liberation? The next verses 4 to 6 is teaching us this. First and foremost thing is that we have to break the shackles which we are under this illusion that this world is for us and we are in it, and there is nothing beyond that. So the slide here is explaining very nicely that there's a bird in the cage, and when the cage door is open, the bird is out and is free. In other words, the bird, when it's out of the cage, it is in its natural constitutional position as a free living entity. Whereas in the cage, it is restricted. So many times Prabhupada gives this example that the spirit soul is encaged in the material body, and therefore it is restricted in where it goes and what it can do. Although it thinks it can do many things. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns. And there surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since the time immemorial. So again, here Krishna is very clearly explaining in verse 3 and 4 that we have to actually understand the tree and cut it down with the weapon of detachment. Detachment means knowledge. If you have knowledge, then you can use that knowledge to free yourself from this darkness. Then one must seek out what is our goal. And that goal is very clearly said. That goal is to go where we don't return back to this material world, and that is the spiritual world. And the purpose of Prabhupada says, it is now clearly stated that in the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the roots are upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When untangled with the material expansion of this tree, one can see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father is the son of such and such person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research. That is the end of research work. One who has searched out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead, then by understanding one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality. And by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word Sangha is very important in this connection because the attachment for sense enjoyment and loading it over material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures. And one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion, in association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to him. So Prabhupada is clearly saying that it is very important that once we have risen ourselves from the darkness of illusion, free from the three modes of material nature, and seeking the higher knowledge, seeking the ultimate goal, then we have to approach the persons who know about these things. And in their association, we can rise above this illusion and come to know the truth. And when we come to know the truth, then what is the first thing, as Prabhupada is saying in the purport, one must do is surrender to him. And who is that? To the Supreme Lord Krishna. So Krishna is saying here, then the first thing one must do is surrender to me. As soon as one surrenders on to Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material expansion. So Krishna is very clearly saying, you come to me. And the 18th chapter is saying, Sarva Dharmam Parijata, Mam Ekam Sarja. I will free you from all these things. Come to me. So the whole understanding of Vedas is to surrender fully to the Supreme Lord. Text 5 is saying very clearly, those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with this material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who unbewildered know how to surrender onto the Supreme Person and attain that eternal kingdom. So it is very clear, he's saying that one must be completely free from false prestige. This is secret of actually being freed from the three modes of material nature or the illusion of this material world. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Trinadapi sunichana, tarorapi sunishana, amanina manidena kirtane sadahari. If you want to be fully absorbed in devotional practices and understand the Supreme Lord, then you have to become free from the false prestige. And then when you're free from false prestige, then illusion and false association will under whom we are entangled will be released from us, and we will come into knowledge or light. The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride, because the conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the Lord of material nature. It's very difficult for him to surrender onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know by cultivation of real knowledge that he is not the Lord of material nature. Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, one can begin the process of surrender. So again, as Prabhupada is saying in the Prabhupada, that we have to be free from this delusion that we are Lord and Master, and therefore we can not surrender. So for once and for all, we understand that the Supreme Lord is the Master, and I am not the Master, or I am not the controller of all that I am presiding over. Then the process of surrender comes. That abode of mine is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by electricity. One who reaches it never returns to this material world. So in the sixth verse, Krishna is clearly explaining that there's two natures. There is the spiritual world and there is the material world. The spiritual world is self-illuminating. There is no need for sun or moon. In the material world, the whole material world is lit up by the sun. If the absence of sun is there, then the whole existence in the material world will not take effect. Even the materialist scientists who do not believe in the Supreme also acknowledge that without the presence of the sun, nothing can exist. The spiritual world, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, which is known as Krishna Loka, Golok Vrindavan, is described here. In the spiritual sky, there is no need for sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity, because all the planets are self-luminous. We have only one planet in this universe, the sun, which is self-luminous. But all the planets in the spiritual sky are self-luminous. The shining effulgence of all those planets called Vikuntas constitutes the shining sky known as the Brahma Jyoti. Actually, the effulgence is emanating from the planet of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan. Part of that shining effulgence is covered by the Mahat Tattva, or the material world. Other than this, the major portion of that shining sky is full of spiritual planets, which are called Vaikunthas, chief of which is Golok Vrindavan. Of course, all the spiritual worlds are Vaikunthas, where it's saying there is no anxiety of fear of time. But as soon as you enter into the material domain, then of course we are under the complete stringent control of time. Time, Krishna says, I am controller. So Krishna controls us through time, and time takes effect, and of course everything begins and ends in time. The word Paramama, Mama are very important here. Actually, every nook and corner is the property of the Supreme Lord. But the spiritual world is Paramam, full of six opulences. In the Katha Upanishad also confirms that in the spiritual world there is no need for sunshine, moonshine, or stars. Na tatra surya bhate na chandrata rakham. For the whole spiritual sky is illuminated by the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That supreme abode can be achieved only by surrender and by no other means. So of course, Prabhupada is emphasizing here very much that there is no way we can be freed from this illusion unless until we understand the supreme goal is the abode of Sri Krishna. And then how to get there is by surrender, and there is no other means. So in the seventh chapter, seventh verse, Krishna is clearly describing our position as Jiva. Vansa Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatan. Manasastan Indriyani Prakristani Karsati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which includes the mind. So, of course, Krishna is very clearly saying that you are all my parts and parcel, and since you are all my part and parcel, therefore you are exactly like me in quality, Satchit Ananda, full of eternity, full of bliss, full of knowledge, and Vigraha, full of beautiful form. But because we are in the material world and under the three modes of material nature, we think we are this material world. This material body is us, and therefore we are struggling with the six senses. The mind is the first one, and through the mind, it controls our six senses, as we spoke earlier on: the tongue, the nose, the ear, the eyes, the touch, the skin. Everything is controlled by the mind, and the mind then takes over and takes you here, then everywhere in complete darkness. When the Prabhupada is saying, in this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in this conditional life and is liberated at and his liberated state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatana, according to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself into innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishnu Tattva, and the secondary expansions are called the living entities, Jiva Tattva. For the living entity, as the individual soul, he has his personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal, as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is free from the material condition, and he is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditional life, he is dominated by material modes of nature, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in this material world. So again, there's great emphasis placed here that unless and until we know ourselves, what is our goal, what is our purpose, then we'll be completely under the three modes, and we'll be dominated by these material modes of nature, and we'll forget that our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, as Prabhupada has said many times, Jivere Sarva Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. Eternally we are servants of Krishna. And until and unless we realize this understanding of our real position as eternal servants of Krishna, and what happens is that we forget the loving service of the Lord. And as soon as we forget the loving service of the Lord, then we are struggling to maintain ourselves in this material world. The living entity thus, taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of eye, ear, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So again, Krishna is very clearly saying that, as you take different bodies, you are given different facilities, different kinds of ears, eyes, tongue, nose, skin, and then you are completely grouped around the mind, and mind will then control you. So in other words, if the living entities adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life he gets a cat or a dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure, like water, but if we mix water with certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure, but consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When, therefore, one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in his next life, he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of the many other forms, for there are 8,400,000 species of life. So again, we understand very clearly by our own personal experience that as we associate with different kinds of surroundings, different kinds of atmosphere, we begin to act like that. So similarly here, the metaphor is given of water is pure, but as soon as you put some color inside, it changes the color. Although the original water is still pure, but it is taking up the consciousness, or it is taking up the color of the dye which is being put in that. So again, we have to understand that we have to be free from this misconception and remain pure. As Krishna says in the previous verses, we are his part and parcel, and therefore eternally we are his fragmental parts, but quality is same as the Supreme Lord's quality and the quality of the jiva is the same. Only the difference is that it is minute in quantity. So consciousness is originally pure like the water, but if mixed with water with certain colors, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure, but consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. So of course, this slide is very clearly saying, depicting that water is very clear, crystal clear. As soon as some red drops of ink is put in there, it begins to take up that color. Krishna's position as a maintainer, Brahman, the supreme, is explained in the next text from 12 to 15. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates darkness of this whole world, comes from me. The splendor of the moon, the splendor of the fire are also from me. So Krishna is explaining here that everything which is emanating in this material world, especially the sun, which is dissipating the darkness, is coming from him. And the moon is also receiving its light from the sun, which also comes from the Supreme. And the fire also comes from the Supreme. So you can see this experience in this world. We see the moon, the sun, and as is described in the scriptures, that these are kind of external manifestation of the Supreme Lord, which we can perceive with our material eyes, that the sun and the moon are the eyes of the Supreme Lord of the universal form. The unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place, but one can begin to establish in knowledge by understanding that the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, the moon, the fire, the electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness, lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. Living entities are essentially the parts and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and he is giving herewith the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back home. So simply by understanding this connection, that everything in this material world is also coming from the Supreme Lord. He is the source, and therefore we are not of this world, but we are also coming from that source. And our constitutional position is to go back to the source, and that is explained here in the purport by Prabhupada, saying he's giving here with a hint of how to come back home, back to Godhead, go home to the spiritual world. So Krishna says in the text 13, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon, and thereby supply the juice of life for all vegetables. So again, Krishna is saying very clearly here that by his potency, all the planets which we see in the night sky as stars are floating in their orbit, exactly working like a clockwork. They don't move out of place. They're moving with the direction of the Supreme Lord. And of course, by the moonlight, it supplies the vegetables with its juice, so that the nourishment for the living entities sustenance comes from. So Krishna is saying, I enter the planet, and we see that without the presence of Krishna, the planet cannot float. And of course, in our Vedic understanding is very clear that the planet itself is a personality. And in this case, we are on this planet Earth, which is called Bhumi or Bhumi Devi, which is likened to a cow, or is a metaphor that the planet is like a cow, means the cow is considered a mother. Mother is providing nourishment. Therefore, for our sustenance, the planet is providing all our nourishment. So it is for our sustenance by the grace of the Lord. So again, if we have a little inclination of understanding the supremacy of the Lord, then we know everything is happening by his desire. Otherwise, we cannot make everything happen in this material with the so-called material science or material knowledge. It is understood that all planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one planetary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entities, and even into the atoms. Due to the presence, due to his presence, everything is proportionally manifested. We can see this slide depicting all the planets. Now, just imagine if there was no control of the Supreme Lord, the planets would be floating all around, without any control. They would come and collide with each other, and we don't know what would happen if planets collide with each other. There won't be life as we know. So it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word rasat makhaha, it is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. So we have experienced in our lives all the succulent vegetables, which taste very nicely and it's got beautiful flavors. Each and every one has uniqueness. This is all coming from the Supreme Lord. So the next, after getting nourishment from all this food stuff of vegetables, how to digest it. So Krishna says, I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities. And I join with the air of life, outgoing, incoming, digest the 4 kinds of foodstuffs. So Krishna is digesting all these things in our stomach. As we know from Ayurveda, that if the fire of digestion is weak, then you have all kinds of disease condition due to inability to digest properly, and therefore the body is not nourished. And if the body is not nourished, then it doesn't receive all the natural minerals required for good health. Of course, all these will not help you, even if you are the most healthiest person, if you do not understand the Supreme Lord. We have to understand the Supreme Lord. And then, as I said before in an earlier presentation, that once you understand the supremacy of the Supreme Lord, then you surrender to him, and you understand your eternal constitutional position, and you serve him in loving spirit, as known as devotional service. So according to Ayurvedic Shastra, we can understand that there is fire in the stomach which digests all the food sent there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger. And when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada is also explaining very clearly here, citing Ayurvedic Shastra of the importance of fire and the origin of the fire. As Krishna says, I am the fire of digestion. So next is very important. Krishna says in text 15, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known indeed. I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna is very clearly explaining here that I am seated in everyone's heart, and by the grace of the Supreme Lord, all forgetfulness and all remembrance, everything comes from him. So of course, as we are more and more associated with the material energy and become completely entangled with material energy and tight and associate ourselves with this material body, thinking this body is me, then Krishna says, okay, if that is what you want, I will give you forgetfulness of your real position. Therefore, in your forgetfulness nature, you will not understand who you really are. And therefore, you will just continue in this world, birth after birth after birth. Then, of course, Krishna says, from me also remembrance of knowledge comes. So I give you this knowledge also if you want to remember me and come to me. And how do I come? How do we go to him? He said, by all the Vedas, I am to be known indeed. So, of course, he's the compiler of the Vedas. He's the supreme knowledge himself. And he gives us the knowledge by which we can come to him. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is a witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. So, of course, if we can remember our past lives, then very quickly we will know our position is not a happy one, because from past lives we know that we're going in cycle of birth and death, and the suffering after suffering after suffering. But here is saying the required knowledge is applied to him, and the remembrance is given to him. So Krishna gives us the required knowledge also to become free from this entanglement. At the same time, he also gives us the knowledge if you want to become situated in this material world eternally. So this slide depicts very clearly of multiple men all sitting there with this, the Supreme Lord in their heart, as mentioned in the purport by Prabhupada. And also Krishna says, I'm seated in everyone's heart, summarizing the Vedas and the Vedanta. Vedanta means to know the Supreme Lord or the conclusion. And Brahman as the Purushottam, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the final chapter, concluding verse of this 15th chapter, the Yoga of the Supreme, it is explaining here now how to understand the Vedas. So the text 16 to 18 is explaining this. Text 16, there are two classes of beings, fallible and infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible. And in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Of course, Krishna is describing two kinds of entities here, that which is fallible and the infallible. So who is fallible, who is infallible, we'll understand in the next verse. So Krishna is clearly defining our position here, as that we are fallible in this situation, and Krishna is infallible. In other words, fallible means that we can become illusion and become completely in this delusion world entangled, whereas Krishna cannot become illusioned by this phantasmagoria of this material world. Prabhupada is explaining in the purport, as already explained, the Lord is the incarnation. In his incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving in the summary the content of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entity who are innumerable can be divided into two classes, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with this material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta. And the Sanskrit word given here, Shara Sarvani Bhutani, means that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean they have no individual identity or individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of creation. So, as we explained, that there are two classes, fallible and infallible. So, as long as the jiva, the living entity, is in this material world, he is fallible, and he is bound to be illusion in this world. But once he's free from these and he goes back to the spiritual world, then he becomes infallible. In other words, he becomes one with the Supreme and quality. So he maintains his individuality in the spiritual world, but he is not now anymore going to be influenced by illusion, because in the spiritual world, there is no illusion or three modes of material nature. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas gives evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and the five senses have their material bodies which are changing. As long as the living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with the matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration of reproduction, then dwindles and vanishes. These are the changes of the material body. But the spirit, in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. There is all there all exists as oneness. Sahara Sarvani Bhutani. And any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to the small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. So we have experienced this, that in our own personal life, that at some stage when we were born, although we cannot remember our birth, but when we grow a little older, then the father and the mother will show you your photos as you were born as a baby and how you're growing. And then from that point onwards, we experience change of life. The body changes in its size and shape and color, and is growing from birth to boyhood to youth to old age. And of course, at the end, the demise comes and we have to leave this body. And as Krishna explained earlier on, that if you are properly situated, then at the time of death, you go back to the spiritual world, or according to the activities you have performed, impious deeds, you take up a particular body which will facilitate your particular requirements of enjoyment, and then you go back and start again, and the cycle keeps going on and on and on. So in text 17, besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them. So of course, the Supreme Lord, whether He is in the spiritual world or He enters in the material world, He still remains complete, full of opulence and full of power, and He is beyond the touch of the material modes, and therefore He cannot be illusioned. He is, as mentioned in this verse, He has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them. So He is the maintainer of this world. The purport Prabhupada clearly says, the idea of this verse is very nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad and Svetaswara Upanishad. It is clearly stated there that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned and some of whom are liberated, there is a Supreme Personality who is Paramatma. The Upanishad verse runs as follows: Nityo Nitanam Chetas Chetanam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one living personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different works. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand this is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. So of course, here it is very clearly stated by Prabhupada in the purport that if we understand this concept of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that He is situated in our hearts, He is directing our activities, and we direct our activities according to His will, as Prabhupada says, the wise man who can understand Him is eligible to attain perfect peace. So if we follow the directions of the Supreme Lord, who has come to save us from this ignorance and delusion, He opens our darkened eyes, He gives us knowledge, guidance, how to come out of this entanglement, and therefore we simply submit to the Supreme Lord and His directives, then we'll attain that perfect peace. In chapter text 18, because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as a supreme person. So unless until we understand the Supreme Lord through the scriptures given to us by His grace, through the transcendental incarnation of the Lord as literal incarnation, Vyasadeva, who has presented all the scriptures to uplift mankind from darkness of ignorance and bring us to knowledge that will give us the right path and guide us to the ultimate destination, which is the spiritual world, then we are failing in our understanding of the Vedas. When the purport Prabhupada says, no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think that the Supreme Lord and the living entities is being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always a question of superiority and inferiority between the personalities. Of course, as Krishna mentioned in earlier verses, that we are his part and parcel, and therefore we are exactly the same in qualities. But in quantity, we are minute. So I give the example of a fire, that when the fire is lit, when it's burning, and then you find the sparks coming out of the fire, that the sparks, which are equally bright as the fire, are the living entities, but they don't have the same potency as the fire. The fire can give you heat and it can also burn. The sparks can only give you light, but it cannot burn you. So in other words, it cannot act as a supreme, but it can have the same qualities. So we are infinitesimal little sparks, as in quality same as the Supreme Lord, but in quantity we are very minute. Therefore, we don't have the same power and potency of maintaining and controlling. So the final two verses of this chapter is concluding is that glory of Purushottama, Jnanam, the knowledge which is given, the concluding context of this chapter is to understand the Supreme Lord. So in the text 19 it says, whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. So Krishna is very clearly saying in the concluding verse of this chapter that who understands the Supreme Yoga. What is the Supreme Yoga? The Supreme Yoga of the Supreme is to know the Supreme. Prabhupada explains yoga means to link. Link with who? Link with the Supreme. So when you link with the Supreme, then know the Supreme Yoga of the Supreme, then of course you understand the Supreme Personality of God, and therefore there is no doubting the knower of everything, and he therefore engages himself in devotional service, O son of Bharata. So he's saying to Arjuna that, look, if you understand this higher science now completely, then you will engage in devotional service. So in the purport of Prabhupada's sake, there are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of living entities, the supreme absolute truth. Now in this verse, the Supreme Personality of God clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna as a supreme person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about absolute truth. But the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Supreme Lord. So without doubt, if we have a real understanding of this knowledge, then as Prabhupada says, without wasting time, and not just time, but he's emphasizing, without wasting valuable time. Because time, as I said earlier on, Krishna says, time I am destroyer of all. So time is ticking away, and every second which goes past cannot be retrieved. And any second which is gone, it is lost forever. Therefore, every second which is granted to us, we should utilize fully in the service of the Lord. As Krishna explains, devotional service is the highest, and we have to engage in that with proper knowledge and proper guidance from the knower of this knowledge. Those are the seers of truth, the devotees of Krishna who understands Krishna consciousness perfectly. So text 20 is the final concluding verse of this chapter. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one. And it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavor will know perfection. Now, Krishna is saying very clearly here, O sinless one. So we started this presentation with the desire tree, showing the pious activities and impious activities. So we are, if we are fully engaged in this material world under the three modes of material nature, then we'll become very sinful and engage in sinful activities. If we become free from the three modes of material nature and understand the Supreme Lord and the knower of the Supreme Lord, then we do pious deeds. And that's why Krishna is saying very clearly, O sinless one, be free from all sins. And then whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavor will know perfection. When the purport, the Lord clearly explains here that there is substance of all revealed scriptures. And one should understand that. One should understand this as it is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in his transcendental service, everyone can become free from all contamination of the modes of material nature. Krishna is very clearly explaining in these words, and the purport is expanded by Srila Prabhupada is saying that by understanding the philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, engaging in his transcendental service, everyone can become free from all contamination of the modes of material nature. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot coexist. Devotional service to the Lord and the Lord himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. Devotional service takes place within the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun, and the ignorance is called darkness. Where the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, wherever devotional service is present under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. So of course, as mentioned, and we also experienced that when night falls, darkness prevails everywhere. And if you switch the light on, then it dissipates the darkness. As soon as you switch the light off, darkness again overwhelms. So similarly here, Prabhupada is explaining that when we are fully engaged in devotional service of the Supreme Lord in terms of Savanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Ashnam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, all the 9 processes of devotional service, hearing about Krishna, speaking about Krishna, remembering Krishna, then there is no chance of the material contamination to coexist, because wherever is Krishna, there is no darkness, and where there is lack of Krishna or Krishna consciousness, then darkness prevails. So while one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which are required to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature. He becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. The problem of material existence are due to the weakness of the heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of the heart. The rest of the chapter, from 6th verse through to the end, discusses Purushottam Yoga, how to become fully attached to the Supreme Lord and understand the Supreme Lord. So here, final concluding purport Prabhupada is saying, this weakness of the heart. So if the weakness of the heart is there, then we will become a victim of this material world, and therefore we fully in illusion and darkness. And as we are in illusion and in darkness, then of course, we cannot see our way clear. Therefore, to see our way clear, it is that we must control our desires when properly situated under the bona fide spiritual master, and therefore we can then make progress in our spiritual life. So I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much. I must say, Maharaj, that the journey that you take us through, particularly diving deep into the purports of Srila Prabhupada is really, it's kind of, we are reading through the chapter. So thank you very much. It's really wonderful.
I will tell you one secret.
Yes, Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada says, a good preacher is memorizing my purport and just repeating my purport.
Jai.
Because Srila Prabhupada is a self-realized soul, and therefore he knows the truth. Jnaninas Tattva Darshina. So therefore, I am fully convinced that all I have to do is repeat Srila Prabhupada's words, and I will be the, how do you say, transmitter of Prabhupada's words. And therefore, those words will have equal potency. Although I am reciting them, but the words are of Prabhupada's words. And when you recite Prabhupada's words, then the potency of understanding is there, because he is Gyaninas Tattva Darshina. We are the via medium. In other words, the Supreme Lord is the power station, Prabhupada is the substation, and we are the connectors, the wire which connects the Supreme to the sub power station, which dissipates electricity throughout the world. So that is my secret of understanding Prabhupada and how to understand this knowledge with purity. Because Prabhupada said, and this, I underline this for every one of us, if we are going to preach, read Prabhupada's purpose. And then Prabhupada says, simply repeat what I have said, that's all. And another secret I will tell you, one time one devotee is asking, when he said to his disciple that read from the Bhagavatam. So he was reading the Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada was taking great joy in reading, hearing the Bhagavatam. Then he asked Srila Prabhupada, you're enjoying your own words? And Prabhupada said, no, I'm not enjoying my own words. Prabhupada said, when I'm translating these books, Krishna is sitting right beside me and he's dictating to me and I am putting in words. So in other words, what Prabhupada's purpose are actually dictated by the Supreme Lord himself. Therefore, we have the supreme yoga of the Supreme Person. That yoga cannot by any means be contaminated by this material world because it's coming in the pure source. That is my conviction.
Thank you so much for sharing these secrets, Maharaj. And we have some question. So the question is from Anupama Radharani Mataji from Dubai. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you for clearly explaining chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. In 15th chapter, 15th verse, as Paramatma, why does the Lord cause forgetfulness of the living entities' past life? Would not people believe in the eternality of the soul, reincarnation, and be motivated to take up the path of spirituality and try to go back to the spiritual world if remembrance of past lives was available to the individual souls?
Well, if we had that ability by Krishna's grace to remember our past lives, we wouldn't be here. Because as soon as you know your past lives, you know that in the past lives there's tremendous hardship, struggle, and suffering, whether in a microbe body or animal body or human body or even demigod bodies. So, of course, Krishna has made arrangement for us, as I mentioned in the previous talks, I think, that the living entity is desirous to enjoy independently of Krishna. So Krishna says, I will create a stage for you. You can play your role acting on that stage. You can act whatever you want on the stage. That is your stage. So Krishna has given us the ability to forget everything past and give us a clean slate to do whatever we want. As I mentioned in the verses in the 15th chapter, that Krishna gives that according to our modes and according to our ability to enjoy in this material world, he gives a particular body. And that particular body also, he gives you particular kind of nose, particular kind of eyes, particular kind of hearing, particular sense of taste, and particular sense of touch. All these different senses are given to you to experience fully. So for example, a hog. Now, hog really enjoys eating stool. That is his business. That it really relish it. Just like you and I don't know about you, but at least I will say myself, you give me a very nice, good pizza, I will be very, very happy and enjoying that, relishing that. But but a hog, he relishes stool. So if the hog is given the intelligence to understand that he's not a hog body, he's a spirit soul, then he will not be surviving in that body at all. And he won't be fulfilling all his desire to eat stool. That's why Prabhupada says that when Indra was cursed and he took a body as a hog, he was enjoying the hog life. until Brahma came and said, my dear Indra, your punishment is over now. The curse is finished. You come back and take up your position as Indra Dev in the heavenly planet. And the hog the Indra in hog's body looked up to Brahma saying, are you crazy? This is the best, highest life of enjoyment. How I can give this up? And Lord Brahma is thinking, how is Indra thinking like this? He has so refined sense of enjoyment in the heavenly planets. And he's thinking eating stool and wallowing in this filth is highest. Then Brahma understands, that is because his intelligence is covered by the Supreme Lord. And his intelligence is covered and he's forgetful of his real position. So then by Brahma's mystical powers, he removes that forgetfulness. Then all of a sudden Indra realizes and looks at his body and says, good God, this is not on. Immediately he gives up the hog body and goes back to Indraloka. So in other words, this material world is created for our stage play. We can do acting of anything we want, enjoy the spirit of this material world as we like. This Krishna says, do it freely. And at some point, the spirit soul will think, because remember that the spirit soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and is pure by nature. So at least in our human life, we try to experience that all knowledge. We want to be eternal. We don't want to die. And we want to be happy, ananda, blissful. And therefore, we are trying to be happy in the material world, in material body, but we cannot. Therefore, Krishna says that I will give you forgetfulness of all these situations. So then, under illusion, you think you are the controller. You're lording over all that you are presiding over. And try. But at some stage, you will come to realization, no, this is not right. There's something not right here. Especially in the human form of life, which is the highest of all the 8,400,000 species of life. In this human form, you have the ability to inquire. And then when you use that inquiring quality, why I'm here, what is my purpose, then you look for answers to these questions. And when you find the answers to these questions, then you are now on your way to completing your spiritual journey, going back home, back to Godhead. Otherwise, you will keep going on in circle, birth after birth after birth, thinking this is it. And this is the highest. And therefore, in all different bodies, each living entity, according to whatever body it has got, that is given by the Supreme Lord, according to the arrangements of the material nature, enjoy in this material world. But of course, for everything you enjoy, there is also struggle. It's not everything is rosy in this material world. Krishna says there's dualities. For everything good, there is bad. So you have to try and be your best, and whoever enjoys can enjoy. But there is no enjoyment in this material world, as an intelligent person will find out. That after going through struggles, and everyone is struggling, even the most richest man. And today, the President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump, he has lost his election, but he doesn't want to give up his position. But once in January, I think 20th of January, the new president will be inaugurated in office and the power of office will be handed over to him. Mr. Joe Biden will be the president of the United States. And all Mr. Trump will be called as the ex-president of the US without any powers. So even the greatest power person who thinks he had everything, Mr. Trump is a billionaire. He has no shortage of wealth, his fame, his power, but everything, his fame is still there, his wealth is still there, but his power is lost. And he cannot handle it. So you can see that even everything, if by arrangement of the Supreme Lord, you have these things, still you will not be satisfied or happy. Therefore, one who is knower of the Vedas, he will then progress in understanding this. And then Krishna says, I will then remove this illusion from it and show you reality. But as long as you want to be independent of me, then I will facilitate that. And that's why Krishna says, remembrance and forgetfulness comes from me. So he gives a remembrance and forgetfulness to us according to our desire. But Krishna says, Bhaktya mam abhijananti, that by bhakti, you can come to me, you can know me. So Krishna is only interested for us to go to him in the process of freely, willingly giving ourselves to Krishna, not by force. Krishna can tomorrow create a tremendous situation where every living entity has no choice but to surrender to the Supreme Lord and then serve him. But then Krishna says, I don't want slaves. I want lovers of me. Those are lovers of me. They will love me and serve me out of love for me, not by mastery of control and fear. So Krishna is interested in loving exchange between the spirit soul and the Supreme. But he is not interested in slavery. Because if he wants, he can just snap his finger and he create the whole universe creation to become slaves of the Lord. But then where's the pleasure for the Supreme Lord? Supreme Lord says, I enjoy when my devotees come to me with love, and then I shower my love to him. And that loving exchange between the devotee and the Supreme is what Krishna enjoys. He doesn't enjoy slavery. Otherwise, if he wants to enjoy slavery, as I said, he is the Supreme, he is the controller. He can create a situation and immediately we'll all become his slaves. But then who wants a slave? He wants a lover, devotee. And therefore, Krishna is creating an environment also that even in this darkness of this material world, I will bring knowledge. And through that knowledge, I will free you. And then by that knowledge, you will come to me.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, the high point was that Krishna doesn't want slaves, Krishna wants lovers. Beautiful point. Anupama Radharana Mataji, is that okay? Can we move on? Okay. So there is a takeaway expressed by Sunaja Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. She's from Sharjah, Maharaj. What a beautiful explanation in a simple way. As Maharaj told, we need to improve our inquiring quality. So that's the takeaway. Anupama Mataji says that you can't unmute, so I'm going to check why this is happening. Just one sec. We will just one sec. This must be insecurity. I'm sorry, just give me a sec.
No problem.
Yeah, can you unmute yourself now?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my respectful obeisances, Maharaj. Thank you so much for the answer. Maharaj, so we understand that to know Krishna, we can know Krishna through the various scriptures and through his pure devotees. We see also that some people may have remembrance of their past lives, and they may so my question was, amongst those people who are more or less philosophically inclined, or who want to know what life is, or who they are, what the purpose of life is, uh, so I was just thinking along the lines that if that knowledge of past life was there, because some people outright reject that there is something known as reincarnation. So I was just thinking that if that ability to remember was there, then such people could take up the process of bhakti more easily.
No, but that's why I explained, that if Krishna gives you that ability, then you'll be forced to take to his service. Krishna says that I want you to come out of your own free will and approach me. That's what Krishna says, that, unless and until you approach me through your free will, out of your full free loving experience, to come to me, then Krishna is not interested. So, Krishna can create, a situation where we will remember him. That is a special grace upon us. But it is not by allowing us to remember our past existence but he will create a favorable situation where we'll inquire about him and then know about him. And also by his divine providence, he will introduce us to those who are knower of Vedas, the knower of Krishna, like Prabhupada, that we will come into contact with him. And therefore, we will then take up Krishna consciousness. But as far as my understanding is that those people who say that I remember my last life, I think they're just speculating. Because Krishna clearly says that for me, forgetfulness comes, so remembrance. But he doesn't give you the remembrance of your past life. The only one incident I cite is from the Bhagavatam, is that that child when he died in Chitraketu's story. The child dies, and then by Narada Muni's power, he brings him back alive. And then he's saying, the father and mother are so happy. And say, yeah, but which father and mother are you? I have so many fathers and mothers. So that one incident is there in Coming Back. That one booklet is called Coming Back. But other than that, I don't think there is any place where one can remember their past existence. And due to that, they come to Krishna consciousness. But they come to Krishna consciousness as Vedavyas says in his Brahma Sutra, Athato Brahma Jignasha, that now that you have come to the platform of inquiry, and as I said, that in the human birth, we all have that ability to inquire, but generally we inquire about everything but Krishna. You want to know why the sun is rising on the east and why it's setting on the west. The child from the very young age, when begins to speak at the age of 3, saying, Mother, why is the tree green? Why our walls are painted pink? Why are you wearing blue shoes? Why this? Why that? They're inquiring. As soon as they begin to open up their minds, they start inquiring. But what is their inquiry? Useless inquiries in one sense. Nobody is inquiring about the Supreme. But through our existence in our life, at some stage, we will be frustrated with our existence. And then we say, why these things are happening? And we look for the answer. And when you're looking for that answer, and you say, why? That inquiry, that is all is required. Then the Paramatma in the heart says, okay, now that you're inquiring about the higher nature, I'm going to make arrangement for you to come to the answers to your questions. And then it leads you to a devotee, or maybe a book may come to you, or you may go to a program where a devotee is speaking about Krishna consciousness, and then you realize, wow, that person makes sense. I want to know more. And then, of course, you take to the spirit of devotion and inquiring more and more and more, and then you're on your way. So that is the secret. But as I said, that my experience personally, nobody remembers their past lives. If you did remember your past life, it would be very difficult to live in this life. Because this life, what we have is, as Krishna says, yam yam vapi smaram bhavam. At the time of death, whatever our consciousness, whatever our desires are there, that is given to us to fulfill in this life. So this life is for fulfillment of our desires at the time of our death in our previous life. But if we cannot fulfill those desires and Krishna interferes with that, then Krishna doesn't allow you to exercise your free will. As Krishna says, I have given you free will as my gift to you. That is yours. Now, once Krishna has given that to us, then we have to exercise our free will, either to love him or to forget him or to serve him.
Jai. Thank you, Maharaj. So
Thank you, Maharaj.
we
Thank you,
have
Maharaj. Very beautifully explained. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, this is from Rajamani Prabhu. Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for wonderful explanation. So we are at the end of our session today. So everyone can switch on their videos, unmute yourself if you want to say Hare Krishna to Maharaj. So we can do that. And before we end in the next 1 or 2 minutes. So Maharaj, you can have a look at everyone. We have Swam Siddha Prabhu, Brajnath Gopal Prabhu is back in Muscat, Muralidhar Prabhu and Anasuya Mataji, Rameshwar Kanai Prabhu, Kavi Rupa, Radhika Mataji, and we have Kuldipika Mataji, Tulasi Mataji. Who else?
Ashish.
Ashish is there, Tarsem Prabhu is there, Vijay Mehta, and so please say Hare Krishna when I'm
Hare
saying.
Krishna Prabhu ji,
Hare
Dandavat
Krishna.
Pranam ji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna,
Prabhu.
Krishna
Hare Krishna,
Maharaj,
Hare
Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam ji Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Okay, who else is there? Anybody wants to say something, want to ask quickly before we end?
Sir, can I say something?
Yes, please, Ashish.
Yeah.
This is Maharaj Ashish from Muscat. Yeah, please speak on.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare
We had like one of the sessions we asked sir that we should have an interactive sessions. One of the session general spiritual questions, not specific to any chapter or something. So I would like to have that sometime in coming time.
That
It will
is
be
up
very
to
helpful.
our Rasakrida Prabhu.
Yeah,
You have to submit your request to him.
yeah, I have requested him.
We did speak about that, and I think it is essential. We will do that with Maharaj, where we can have a more personal one-to-one session. So I think I'll speak to Maharaj and then we will organize that. I think it is an idea which should be acted upon and for the benefit of all of us. So we'll do that, Ashish.
Yes. And
Anything?
Maharaj, one thing I want to share with you
Yes.
that recently last month we are blessed with a baby girl.
Hare Krishna, very nice.
Hare Krishna.
Yes,
So,
yes, house.
Yeah, we were listening sessions from last 1 year, and fortunately, that baby likes these Krishna chanting very much. Like we play the songs, and she gets sleeps while listening to those songs. And once the song stops, she suddenly wakes up. So from this age of 1 month, she's like used to it, and she likes the chanting very much. And she even sleeps when sleeping that. So that's a very sweet feeling, which I want to share.
You're very blessed by a beautiful young Lakshmi Devi in your house. Prabhupada said that when a child is born in a devotee's family, there is a special blessings of the Lord that he sends a particular very, how do you say, a selective soul enters that house, and of course that child will bring a lot of joy to you and also bring happiness of making you Krishna conscious. Because when she hears Krishna, she's happy, then you make her hear Krishna, then you also have to hear Krishna, you see. So everybody is an instrument to hearing about Krishna's chanting. It's very nice. I'm very happy that you are blessed with beautiful young Lakshmi Devi in your house.
Hare Krishna. All right. Anybody else would like to say something before we end?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. We listened
Hare
your
Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam Maharaj. I'm Kabir Paratika, Devi Dasi. Maharaj, your lectures was really nectar for us. Like so many things, how we have to surrender to the Supreme Lord was being explained wonderfully. Maharaj, my only desire is like, yes, we need to fully surrender, but our responsibilities are keep increasing, keep coming in the Grihastha's life. Like how we can, we should not give priority, but how we can get off all these things and only think, okay, we surrender fully to the Supreme Lord. That is also, I feel like, how we override all this difficulty, this kind of materialistic life in the Grihastha's life, Maharaj.
Well, you see, every individual has their own, how do you say, equilibrium or balance. So I would not say that one way of thinking is for one person is same as the other person. This is English saying, one man's food is another man's poison. So what may be good for me may not be good for you. So I generally say that you have to feel content and happy in your balance of your duties as a householder, and how much time you are dedicating for Krishna and Krishna's worship, and reading about Krishna, hearing about Krishna, serving him in different ways. And if you feel happy, that means you have found your balance. And if you continue with that balance, then there is no question of distress or unhappiness. You got to find your own balance. That balance you will know yourself when you are situated in a very self-content happiness, that you are content with what you have and what you are doing. So unless until you find that equilibrium, and you have to keep searching and tweaking, a little bit of this, little bit of that, less of that, more of this, then you'll find that you found a balance. When you find your balance, and that is the secret formula for you as an individual. So same, I would advise everyone who is practicing Krishna consciousness, find your own balance where you feel content and happy. When you're content and happy, that means that you are now rightly situated in your endeavors to progress in spiritual life.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hari Bol. Sure, Maharaj. We'll follow. We'll balance.
Jai.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So it's 9:08 here in Oman, and obviously it must be 6:08. Or Maharaj, is it 5 o'clock at your end?
5:08.
5:08. So on that note, Maharaj, thank you again for this yet another wonderful session, and we will certainly look forward to many more. And we will also have a personal interaction or interactive session very soon. I will plan that out with you. And we also, again, request all the devotees to please subscribe to our channel, the School of Vedic Studies, and also share it to as many devotees as possible, so that everyone can get the benefit of these very insightful sessions, which can go a long way in the progress of our devotional life. So once again, thank you very much, Maharaj. Let's pay our respects to Maharaj. Vancha kalpataru and thank you to all the attendees, all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Thank you very much. And we will connect with Maharaj again next Saturday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj.
Holiness
Thank you, Maharaj.
Atmanivedana Swami Maharaj ki
Ki Jai.
His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki
Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.